What is up, my peepholes? This is your guy, Cly, and it's time for a little DIY. Now today, I want to talk about something that's going to be pretty useful for a lot of my fellow tabletop gamers out there, and that's replicating your own board game pieces. Because every now and then you're going to lose a piece, or you're going to break a piece, or you're going to do like I did in my previous video and thrift a game missing a ton of crap, or heck, you might just want your own custom colored pieces. I'm here to tell you that's actually not that difficult to pull off. The technique I'm going to show you today will involve the ever so humble meeple, but you can actually use what I'm going to show you on a ton of different designs. I just so happen to not be that great on replicating some of the more detailed figs, but if I'm not mistaken, you can do it for those too. Anyway, let me get these out of the way and get started. Alright, to get this process started, first off you're going to need one of the items that you're hoping to duplicate, in my case, a meeple. This is one of the spare meeples from an incomplete copy of Carcassonne I thrifted a while back. Don't worry, I do have a complete one that I got for $2.50, but this little guy, I don't really care what happens to it. And to make things easier, I'm going to be attaching it to the bottom of this paper cup just so I have a little bit of an easier time handling it. And to accomplish that, I could glue it down like I've done for some other things in the past, but in this case, I'm going to be using some double stick tape that I picked up at Dollar Tree. It's nowhere near the best double stick tape on the market, but it does what I need it to do. Notice how it came off the cup pretty easily then, but I've got it on my cup. I'll just firmly press down my meeple, and yeah, it'll do the job. As for making the mold itself, what I'm going to be using is 100% silicone caulk. I've got another cup here to hold the caulk, and I've got my caulking gun. I actually really like this brand. It's only $4 for a huge tube, and I've made a ton of molds out of this one already. Also, if you want to keep the caulk from drying out, I found using a little bit of aluminum, I believe, foil. I don't think this is tinfoil. I think this is aluminum foil. Can't remember now. Well, the rubber band does a great job blocking oxygen and moisture from the atmosphere. Now you just need a little dollop. There we go. And what I'm going to be doing is just adding a drop or two of acrylic paint, which I just so happen to have right here. Let me just cap my caulk. There we go. Those familiar with the Instructables community might recognize that I'm making a basic version of what is called Ugu in the community, also known as Proto-Putty here on YouTube after it was co-opted by the King of Random. It's been around much longer than that, people. I got a lot of people talking about that in a previous video. Let's just leave it there. But instead of going the full way and adding cornstarch, which I did in a previous video, I'll go ahead and link it even though it's from my dark period making fidget spinners. Trust me, it was a cynical way to make money, but it was also a sneaky way to teach people DIY techniques. I'm not going to be adding the cornstarch this time around. I just want a nice thin mold making compound. Let me just get in there, break up the paint. There we are. I may have added too much paint this time around, but it looks like it is mixing in. There we go. Yeah, 1 or 2 drops is all you need. You add too much, you'll have a tough time mixing it, but there we go. If you're wondering why I added the paint when I'm not adding the cornstarch, that's because the paint doesn't just act as a way to show that you've mixed everything up, but it's also a catalyst. The way silicone caulk cures is that it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. That's why it dries, well, not so much dries, but it cures from the outside in. But by adding the acrylic paint, which is water-based, all throughout the caulk, you're catalyzing it so that it will dry completely throughout, actually in a few short hours. So I need to move quickly. I'll just throw this over here. There we go. Need to get my stir stick where it won't make a mess. Now, initially what I'm going to use is a toothpick to spread this compound. I'm just doing a little smooth on. I want to make sure I get it through all the nooks and crannies. I've seen people treat this more like a putty and then just smash it onto the piece, and while that does work, it has a terrible habit of holding on to air bubbles. So by doing it with a toothpick first and just making sure I get in all of the different spaces, I get a much better mold, even though I'm not doing a thinner pour-on silicone in a vacuum chamber. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but I've gotten some pretty good results. Let me just spread this around and I will come back after I've done that. All right, I've handled the nooks and crannies, which means it's time for the return of the stir stick. Just gonna glob it on from this point forward, still trying to make sure I fill in all of the gaps. I don't want any air pockets between the legs or the arms or any of those areas. So there we go. Just spread it nice and thick because you do want this mold to be pretty durable. It's not going to be super rigid because I didn't add any filler in the form of cornstarch, but it's still going to do a pretty decent job. Admittedly, if you're doing larger pieces, the cornstarch method, which is in the video that I linked previously, will be what you want to do after this. I always lead with a partial ugu, but if I'm going to be doing something with a larger cast or I just want to make a more durable mold, I will typically, oh goodness, it came off of the double stick tape. Told you it wasn't the best. But it won't ruin the mold, don't worry. But if I'm going to be doing something where I want a more durable mold, or I need something with just more of a rigid side, whether or not I need it to last that long, I will always follow up with an outer layer of the cornstarch mixed version. There we go. That should be more than good enough. Oop, get a little see-through spot right there. To make your life easier, you might want a flat top, and to accomplish that, I just use a coin. Just press it on and try to make it as level as you can. There we go. When the mold cures, you can just pull the quarter off, or whatever denomination of coin you use, and you'll have a nice flat base. It'll make your life much easier when it comes to leveling out your resin or your casting material of choice. I think that's good enough. I might have a kind of weak spot there, but don't worry, because I already have a mold that I prepared earlier. And here's the little guy I prepared earlier. Now, if you'll notice, I used a yellow meeple and yellow silicone because, like an idiot, I didn't think about showing this one on camera. Whoops. Anyway, because I didn't use the reinforced silicone, this actually peels away quite nicely. Though the reinforced silicone molds do have their uses for things like polymer clay and epoxy putty, I'm just using standard resin, so I much prefer the non-reinforced. So, since I'm using resin, I'm going to need my cup and stir stick as well as my resin of choice. In this case, I'm using a really old batch of Easy Cast. I emphasize the fact that it's really old because my hardener has turned really dark amber. Fortunately, I use opaque colorants whenever I cast these, so hasn't been an issue yet. I do have fresh resin that I will be storing in these syringes later once I run out. And if you're wondering, these syringes are actually from Dollar Tree. These are just flavor injectors where I modified the needles so that they act more like caps than as stabby things. And to make measuring it out of these syringes much easier, I just so happen to have a few of these much smaller syringes that have the perfect shaped tip to make this very, very painless. So let me show you how I do that. All I'm going to be doing is getting 1.2 milliliters out of each one of these syringes. So I just take the little guy. Okay, good. This one is my marked one. That means it's my hardener. Dock it like so. Press the syringe plunger on the big one and stop. A little back pressure there. All right. 1.2 milliliters of hardener. Go ahead and wipe and recap. I don't want to make a mess. This has actually made my resin casting so mess-free. I love it. I'm never going back, at least not on the small projects. And next we bring in the resin itself. There we go. Once again, I need 1.2 milliliters. Perfect. Wipe and recap. Now we're at the very important stage of choosing colorants. I've used quite a few different ones in the past, ranging from acrylic paint, which this one's actually UV reactive acrylic paint, to dyes. Heck, I've even used holographic glitter, seed beads, cutoffs from my chainmail making. But the one that I want to use today is actually, well, okay, not directly. The one I'm going to use, mica powder, because while you can get mica powder in various forms from your local craft store, it's not so cheap. Or you could go to eBay like I do for a lot of my actual mica powder and pay maybe a quarter of the price of the craft store variety, as well as having a huge selection. I should point that out because when I go to my local craft stores, I can only find about 12 different colors of mica powder, whereas on eBay and AliExpress, I've got a selection from over 60 different tones, and I've actually been experimenting with mixing my own. But today, I'm not going to be using mica powder. Instead, I'm going to show you a little sneaky trick that I learned not too long ago, actually over a year ago, and that's eyeshadow. You can pick up a very cheap eyeshadow palette from your local dollar store, and it's a great pigment for resin. This should just be something that you need to know if you're going to get into resin casting, because if you want a cheap selection of colors, this is the way to go. Anyway, oh, it's taped. No, I am thwarted by tape. There we go. I keep forgetting about that part. Can I get it? There we are. And as you know, I love the color green, so that's what I'm going to be using today. All you need to do is first add your resin to the cup, followed by your hardener. There we are. Move my mold out of the way and just scrape a little bit. Here we are. I'll just push it this way so that I don't contaminate my other colors. And then dump. Perfect. I don't think I have enough actually. I'm going to be cautious, and there we go. That should hopefully be enough. I'm going to need to clean that out before I close it up. But there we go. You'll want to stir the resin for about 30 seconds to a minute. Because I'm using such a small quantity, it's pretty easy to make sure everything gets mixed evenly. And to be honest, I've been saving this palette for a video for a while now, so I'm really excited to see how this green turns out tomorrow. It's going to take about 24 to 48 hours for this to cure. Though depending on the environment, I've had these cure within 12 hours. There we go. Let's see. Ooh, that's a really nice light green. It's actually lighter than I was anticipating. Let's keep stirring. I think we're just about to enough. I just want to make sure I break up all the clumps, because that's the downside to using eyeshadow, is it is pretty clumpy. Okay, I'd say that's good. Bring in the mold, dust off the eyeshadow that decided to remain behind, and then let me go ahead and tighten my shot. Notice still got some eyeshadow there. To put it in the mold, instead of doing a direct pour, what I like to do is just scoop a little bit on the end of my stir stick and drizzle it into the mold. Oh no, I got some on this really ratty yoga mat that I found in a dumpster. Whatever am I going to do? I'll clean that up shortly. Yes, if you've wondered what this surface is that I've made all of these videos on, it's just a green yoga mat that I found in the trash when I was dumpster diving at 5 Below many years ago. Haven't done that in a while. Just imagine how many fidget spinners I would have gotten by now. I'll be right back after I do the full transfer, because I've got a few more things I want to talk about, And I'm not going to be showing you the finished product of this little guy today because I forgot to color correct my camera. I hope this whole thing looks good. What I will do, actually, looks I'm gonna be finishing this while talking. What I will do though is when I remove this from the mold, I'll be sure to post a picture on my social media as well as my website, I think. So I'll post it on Instagram, I'll post it on Twitter. You can find the links at the top of my channel. And I've been getting a few more followers from here on those services, so thank you much for that. Let me go ahead and widen my shot again. Let's get that out of the way. One thing I want to talk about is when you remove the meeple from the mold or whatever piece you're doing. Because if you made a mold out of a wooden piece, you're going to end up with a matte coated meeple. And that's what happens with all of the ones that I make. What you want to do to mitigate that is a clear coat. Now you could go about buying a can of spray clear coat, but what I do is I use clear nail polish. This is another thing that I got from Dollar Tree. And while this guy is already clear coated, I just want to say that it's really easy to apply and one of these bottles lasts ages. I've already done several dozen Meeples with this bottle alone and I'm only halfway down. I just want to bring in the Meeples one more time. But using this method, you can make yourself replacement parts or custom colors for a lot of your favorite games, or if you're so inclined, you can make jewelry out of them. And if you want to know how much it costs to make these, minus the setup of the molds, which even that's only a few cents, each one of these Meeples, taking into account the cost of the colorant, is a nickel. It's only a nickel for these. And that's a steal because a lot of the places that I've been trying to find Meeples online, you're looking at paying 50 cents for a single Meeple. So if you're willing to invest in the resin, invest in the silicone, you have a great source of cheapos here. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got to say. I've rambled. I hope this video comes out okay, but at the very least I can say until next time, this is your guy Cly, signing off.